Hi, everybody. It's the other Mike Goodman, and this is Legends of Tabletop.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. It's episode 130 as we continue to just crank through these episodes. We've got Mike Goodman, or the other Mike Goodman, or the real Mike Goodman. You decide.
Exactly.
I don't know. And that disembodied head is my itinerant co-host and hetero life mate, Vince. What's going on, buddy?
That's right. How are you, sir?
Good, good. I haven't talked to you in a little bit.
It has been a while. I blame you.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
Yeah, it's probably my fault.
Cool. So welcome to the show, Mike. First time having you on. It's glad you could take some time out to hang out with us.
Thanks very much. I'm glad to be here.
Cool.
Cool.
Glad to have you.
We've got some questions and stuff prepared for you, but so you've been involved in the SCA for like 25 plus years now. How did you initially get involved in that?
It's about right. I think it's let me see. This is 2017, so a little over 25 to 27 years.
Wow.
I got involved with it years, obviously over 27 years ago. I heard about it through Dragon Magazine. Somebody had there was this somebody had written either a letter or it was a description of a cover painting. I think that's what it was, a description of a cover painting, where somebody was talking about how they their SCA friends would go wandering around in the woods in their full clothes and their full garb, singing some of the songs from the old Lord of the Rings cartoon film. And
Nice.
At that adolescent age, for some reason, it popped in my head, this is the coolest thing ever. Now, I have no idea why I thought that was the coolest thing ever at the time. But it just seemed like such a neat communal kind of thing to do. And the SCA ended up on a couple of documentaries, if I remember right. And then I started getting involved with it actually in person when I started in college. I was more interested in dance and telling stories and singing and the whole atmosphere, the whole medieval atmosphere that you could create. And then eventually, as years went on, drifted into an interest in medieval sword fighting, Renaissance sword fighting culture, and all those kinds of things, which has been my study now for 15, 17 years, something like that.
Cool. And I guess maybe we should take a step back real quick in case people don't know. The SCA is the Society for Creative Anachronism. They're international. They've got 20 kingdoms, 30,000 members. It's like a worldwide thing. 21, okay. Nice. And were you a gamer at the time? Like, was it obviously you're reading Dragon Magazine, so you were
yes.
already predisposed to that sort of sort of background kind of stuff?
Yeah, and what's really one of the really neat things, as a side note, and I've got to go through my Dragon Magazine CDs. There's an article in there about the SCA in one of them, which also references, I want to say it was Hank Reinhardt or one of the other big Western swordsmanship guys, and a few game designers. So yeah, there were definitely a lot of loops that were intertwined in that. But yeah, I was a gamer before I knew I was a gamer. I think my first exposure to it was the movie Mazes and Monsters.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't understand until later was supposed to be a cautionary tale.
Right.
I watched Mazes and Monsters and thought, that looks so cool that I totally missed the point. I mean, I was like 8, but it just seemed like the coolest thing in the world to do.
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, exactly. I've got 2 copies on VHS hidden somewhere in this house.
Nice.
I had a copy of the book floating around for a long time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love the idea of gaming. The first game I ever owned was the old FASA Doctor Who role-playing game with some of the worst rules ever. And I had been playing basic D&D with a few friends at that point. I still remember the first module, I think, that we played, which was Horror on the Hill.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. With the 2 rooms. I mean, big spoiler for the dungeon. Yeah, you get dropped in there. There's a room with like 8 doors, and you go through them, and they just keep twisting around. Then you end up back in the room with 8 doors. Oh, it turns out there are 2 rooms with 8 doors. Like, I just ruined the module for everybody. There are some guys from the BX boards that are just going to be coming after me for that now. Yeah, I loved. You put a game down in front of me, I play it. Like, it's I've never been picky. You name a role-playing game, if there's a table, I'll waste a few hours, sure. Wargaming, I cut my teeth early with that too, with some of the old Avalon Hill war games. LARPing I didn't get into until college, after SCA, because I always thought it was weird. And then yeah, but dressing up in tights and fighting with the sword, that's perfectly normal.
Right.
So yeah, I've been a gamer for a super long time. It's like, it is the thing for me. It's actually hard for me to choose on weekends. If I've got an opportunity to do gaming stuff or an opportunity to do SCA stuff. And there's a lot of gamers in the SCA too. A lot of gamers in the SCA.
Right. And I guess that's probably not a surprise, right?
Yeah. No, not at all. And you get a lot of guys who, I think one of my first meetings, I asked very meekly, like, so does anyone here play D&D? And everybody in the room is like, we got a session right after this. His persona, fourth character. Like, it was every, and the fact that I was the youngest person in the room at the time, I think at 20. And there were a lot of these older people who were like, yeah, game this weekend. Like, that was really encouraging for me. Like, yes, when I get older, I'm still going to be playing.
Yeah.
Cool. I had a brief brush with the SCA. Geez, I guess I was probably in college at the time. I was working at a restaurant, and one of the younger guys that was, also like a busboy or something. He was like, "Oh, you got to come out to the, to the park this weekend. We got this SCA thing." What the fuck are you talking about? He's like, "No, it's a Society of Creative Anachronism. We get all dressed up. You come down, you can be like an archer or whatever. We get like foam swords." And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So I went down, and they were doing a reenactment. It was pretty cool. I'd considered kind of getting in. And then he was, kind of like laying it out, because you've got, different baronies, and you've got, your kings and queens and all these different things. And I'm like, you know what? I can't. I don't want to do all that. Like, that's too much for me.
Yes.
So how are things structured? So, like, if you're part of the organization, the STA is like the overall organizational body. Like, how does a substructure work? Like, how does your individual kingdom operate? Like, are there meetings that you have to attend? Is there like royal business or like, court things? Like, is there things that take place outside of, hey, we're getting together this weekend for a reenactment?
Yeah, there's on the micro level, like, every person, there is no expectation that every person has to be involved with the big ultra management of the bigger organization. And remember, this was a group that was started by a bunch of hippies at a party, where that they build as a protest against the modern age. There is a board of directors and a actual like legal structure, which I am in no way part of, because a really super big organization has to have that kind of managing body to it, and they do all the managing body legal type stuff. Game side, we have kingdoms. Kingdoms are geographical areas. They are ostensibly ruled by a king and probably a king and queen, although we've changed some policies recently. The crown is chosen by right of arms. There are two big, at least here in the East, there are two big tournaments every year. Fighters come out, winner ends up as king. His consort joins him. And they serve as prince for 6 months and then king and queen for 6 months. There's some figurehead stuff there. There's a lot of work on their part. There's a lot of delegation of responsibilities. They rule because we let them. They rule because we believe. That's kind of a common saying around us. As you get into smaller geographical areas, you may have shires or baronies. These work just like chapters in a fan club. Same idea. There are offices in each of them, the same way that you might have a treasurer. We have treasurers. We have a seneschal who is the actual legitimate head of the organization for that little area, who actually has to do with the day-to-day business, such as it is. We have people who oversee safety and policy when it comes to our combat arts. And those are smaller. They might be as big as a couple of counties. Now, here in the East, our East Kingdom goes everywhere from Delaware up to northeastern Canada. We're one of the biggest kingdoms. We're the second oldest, and we've got, I want to say we have the highest population density. Other kingdoms like Atlantia, which is directly to our south, which is a chunk of the southeastern seaboard. Our West Kingdom is big chunks of California and some of the areas out there. Drachenwald, which is Europe. Actually, I want to say everywhere overseas. I have to look that up. So we have a global scale, but things get more manageable as they get down into the local areas. And if you don't want to be part of the management, you don't have to be a part of the management. It's for those of us who are, it can get daunting. and I think it does get a little intimidating. I take breaks frequently. I skipped out on an event a local event a couple of weeks ago because I just need a weekend of veg. But yeah, the organization is it's structured basically the same way as a fan club, just with better clothes. There's a lot of informality. You might have little practices at people's houses or little meetings for poetry or for making clothes or that kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of that, a hippie community kind of attitude at its heart. And I think that's probably one of the biggest attractions of it, is that it's as big as the organization is. It feels like family. It still feels like a community. I like knowing that I can travel anywhere in the United States. And if I look up an SCA chapter and I go in, there's a commonality there, and we'll appreciate each other, and I'll be generally pretty welcomed. And anyone who travels, you'll see emails going out to people. Hey, I have to be in town for work for a couple of weeks. Where are your local fighter practices or your fencing practices? Can I come out and meet? I've met people from all over the world who are just passing through, but they're in the SCA, so we hang out together and we'll go do our thing, have a few drinks afterwards. That sense of community is definitely worldwide. It's one of the things that holds us in.
Cool. That's very cool. Shit, I just thought that went away.
What the hell's going on over there?
I don't know. We're catching an echo, and I'm going to have to edit it.
Got an echo? Yeah.
God damn it. Oh, it went away. Awesome.
Nice.
So do you think probably the majority of people just kind of, I don't want to say just show up on the weekend, but but by and large part, you come out for the event, you come out to, to catch up with friends. And like say, if you're, if you have a larger event that's drawing from, multi-state areas, it's kind of like like a reunion of sorts, I guess, when everybody gets together.
That is a great way of describing it. Yeah, absolutely. The bigger, well, number one, it's all volunteer. So things don't work unless you have volunteers. Generally, if there's like a local event, I'm going to be there helping out because they're my local people. They're my friends. I want to see them succeed. So I'm going to do what I can to help them out. Either if it's going to be something that I think is really super fun, like I get to run the fencing tournament or something like that, or if I've got to wash dishes after the feast, or help clean up the hall. Those are just as important. So there's that community aspect to it. Again, that keeps everything running. And then the reunion part of it absolutely is a big thing. If there's a very large event, it's a nice thing knowing that it might be drawing your friends from Massachusetts or from Maine or from Florida. Say again?
I say, wow, that's pretty cool.
It is a neat thing. This weekend we have our Yule celebration in Philadelphia.
Oh wow!
Which is going to be enormous, and we have a lot of friends. I know a few friends who are coming by who live a little bit further away. But even just for all the local people, it's like a gigantic Christmas party, with all of your extended family.
Where in Philly is this going to be? Do you have like a park area, or is it a?
We're actually having it at the German Society, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous location. The main hall is where we're going to be having our feast, which is gigantic and beautiful. They have a Rathskeller downstairs, which keeps that great Renaissance-y kind of bar feeling. And there are going to be people who are going to be spending the day down there. There's going to be music. So much stuff. Arts and sciences displays. A lot of some royal business is happening there. A few people are getting awards. The king and queen and prince and princess are showing up. So that always makes it a bigger, more regal kind of thing.
Yeah.
The only thing that we ask of people when they're showing up for things like this, for brand new people, is an attempt at medieval garb. And we're pretty relaxed about the word attempt. We try to make that barrier as low as possible. I think the next big event after that in a week is a very big fencing tournament in Pennsylvania that's going to be drawing friends of ours from all over the East. We've got friends from Canada who are going to be coming down for it.
Wow.
And again, all my friends from, Maine, Massachusetts, Western PA, all over the East are going to be coming out for it. I expect I think we've ended up with like 80-something fencers every time tournament. Yeah. But yeah, the reunion thing is a big, awesome feeling. We have a huge event out in Western Pennsylvania called Penzic, the Penzic War, which draws a little over 10,000 people every year.
Wow.
Holy cow.
2-week-long event. Technically, we're a city by numbers, which means like we have to have all of the things that Pennsylvania requires for a community there.
You have like a temporary zip code? Is that?
We might, actually. It wouldn't surprise me if we did.
That's pretty funny.
But you want to talk about a reunion like that, that's the one. People prep for this thing all year, and then a week's, whether you're spending 1 week, 2 weeks out there, there's that chance to run into those friends from Australia that you only see once a year. Those friends from Arizona, California. I'm just thinking of places that I have friends from, Colorado, Florida, who are going to make it up there. This is my one chance a year to see them. And you just like any other big family gathering, you squeeze as much time as you can with them. And you're going through the day, enjoying their company, fencing, fighting, whatever it is you're doing that day, at night, partying, dancing, reveling. And then you go on your 50-week town run and then wait for next year. It's Brigadoon,
Nice.
What's the largest combat you've ever been a part of? You're talking about 10,000 people. Obviously, they're not all, fighting or fighters, but I'm thinking role models. There's just
exactly right.
People just kind of running around.
I have helped service as a kind of safety officer for the large field battles, which I'd have to look at the numbers. I want to say something in the thousands.
Wow, that's crazy.
It was my job to just kind of hold to be the marker where the battlefield ended.
Mm-hmm.
Just me and a stick. And, that went about as well as you'd expect it to. The fight kind of flowed over to me and then kind of flowed over me. And
Nice.
it was, I remember one of the last things I remember was seeing a diamond pattern on this guy's armor and just thinking, that's really interesting. I wonder if he rivets every corner of that. And then people were helping me up. And I'm like, man, are you okay? And that was only 8 guys running me over, so I guess that was okay. The largest that I've personally fought in, a couple of hundred to a side.
Wow.
With our fencing equipment, which was still not nothing.
I'm sure.
That was it's an experience. The esprit de corps that you feel with your friends out there is a lot of fun. And the visceral sense of a fight where you know that you're not going to die,
Yeah.
In that kind of, like, we have actually at the Penzic field, there's a castle. They built a nice piece of castle wall there. And one of our battles is storming the castle. So we have built rubber band guns, like not, little cheesy desk rubber band, surgical tube rubber band guns, pistols, and muskets. And so we're assaulting this thing, and with our firearms. Some of my friends have built a rubber band cannon.
Nice.
That actually fires giant surgical tube. It's a really fun experience. And after you're done assaulting that side, switch sides. Now you get to go defend it. And at the end, the enemies are coming through the gates. It is exhilarating when you see a couple of hundred people trying to flow through your gate that you are defending.
Mm-hmm.
Your friend on one side, and some guy who has just become your friend on your other side. And you really do feel that moment of, well, this is it, guys. We're in this together, and it's and you walk away exhilarated, and you walk away smiling and laughing, and patting dudes on the back, and congratulating them on killing you.
The camaraderie.
Exactly. There's a video of we actually built siege engines, like relatively safe siege engines. And there's a video of someone with a ballista that fires these golf tubes with tennis balls on the end of it. And when you get hit with one, I've been hit with one. When you get hit with one, you know you're hit. We have rules that say how far you're allowed to be hit by one of these. And these dudes are fighting in steel armor with big wooden weapons. And you're allowed to attack the team that mans the ballista. And the video, someone had a GoPro on their helmet. And you see this dude break out of the battle He's charging the ballista, sword up. He's running right at it, and God bless him. They fire that ballista. It hits him square in the chest. He dies. And then he gets up and he's walking towards the ballista team. And as he gets closer, you can hear him laughing.
Yeah.
High-fiving everyone on the team. Just, guys, that was great. That was a perfect shot. Beautiful. That's what I'm there for. That kind of camaraderie. I fencing tournaments that I'm in, if you kill me, I will very likely smile and tell you how good a shot that was. Because why wouldn't I? It's not, you're not actually killing me.
Right.
And if you get better, I have more fun. It's that kind of honor, chivalry, courtesy. They mean something there, not in a goofy kind of "oh my lady" kind of thing, but it is it's a place to display them. It's a place to have those things that you read about. Even though historically, was chivalry different? Yeah, absolutely. But we get to keep that romantic ideal going there.
Mm-hmm. Now, with all that stuff, you say wooden swords. Are they foam wrapped? Do you have like more of a boffer sword, or is it like a wooden training sword? Practice sword?
They're rattan. Rattan is a bamboo, and there's no foam. It is just the bare bamboo that's wrapped with usually duct tape or something that prevents it from splintering.
Right.
And that's it. And there are standards for what can be used for helmets, for body armor, for stuff like that. What parts of the body have to be covered with what kind of material. But our heavy weapons guys use weapons generally made out of rattan. And when I say bamboo, I don't mean little thin. I mean
yeah.
sticks of rattan. We also have steel fighting using fencing weapons, not like epées and foils, the little collegiate things. I'm looking around in my office to see if I've got any of my fencing equipment here. And I do. I have one of my rapiers here.
Nice.
There's a shock. And a little rapier. So not a traditional Olympic fencing weapon. A little bit heavier. I can actually do more historically appropriate swordsmanship with this.
Mm-hmm.
Armor is less. Basically, I wear good thick fabric. It is safety tipped, not sharp. So we've got that going, and we've also got cut and thrust, which is a relatively new combat form. I have that weapon here as well, now that I'm thinking about it. I actually use this guy there for that. Again, not sharp. I don't have a tip on this, but I usually do. I took it off so I could keep it in the scabbard. Again, more historically accurate kind of fighting. Not hitting hard with this. Nobody's getting hurt. But we get to practice with these. We also have archery against non-living targets. We also have combat archery against living targets. You're not using real arrows with those. Those are the big martial things. Horsemanship, but that's not really you don't really see. There's no jousting against other people, but we do have equestrians.
Mm-hmm. Now, with that many people and that's kind of weapons and things, how many injuries do you typically see in a long weekend, or any?
Less than I think we said our numbers are less than high school football.
Wow. Okay.
If I see one injury in a tournament, that's a lot.
That's good.
We don't see many. We don't hit hard. We train ourselves fencing wise, since that's my specialty, we train ourselves to hit very lightly. It's more about the technique and being able to place the shot than it is, to swing hard. Where our rules prevent that, actually. The most common fencing injuries you see are your general sports injuries, pulled muscles,
sprains and such.
Sprain, the occasional sprain. Very rarely, if someone is hit hard, then there might be something as a result of that. The heavy weapons guys, the guys who are swinging the wood weapons around in the steel armor, I saw one injury last weekend, maybe two, out of a full day of fighting. They don't usually see, and again, I think it's more sports related kind of injuries than anything else. We take our safety really, really seriously. We inspect all of our gear before going out onto the field every time. If there's anything questionable, it's taken off the field. We want to be able to drink with our friends afterwards. So there's no messing around with this kind of stuff. It's one of the things that makes me feel good about it as a reenactment group. We care about the people we're fighting. Everyone I fight is my friend. So I'm going to make absolutely certain. And if I do something wrong, if someone does get hurt, we look to see what happened and do everything in our power to keep that from ever happening again. Accidents happen. I've taken super hard hits. I've rethought my armor after some fight and said, maybe I should change what I put around my throat from some of these. But the safety is the number one concern off of everything. So we're really careful about what goes out onto that field.
Gotcha.
Right. And you have to be with so many people, right? I mean, in such a litigious society that we have, even though going in, like you sign up to do the thing, you're like, no, that guy hit me and it was too hard. I mean, have you seen anything like that? I mean, have you seen of either people taking offense to maybe a hit that they thought was too hard, or is there some sort of adjudication or anything while you guys are out over the weekend where people can bring grievances and things?
Oh, sure. We've when it comes to the fighting stuff, we have marshals who are standing on the outside who serve as a combination of safety warden and referee. But it's up to the individual honor of the person fighting to be able to say whether or not they're killed, and it's no fun if someone doesn't take a blow.
Right.
And eventually reputations develop if that happens, and we're an organization based on chivalry, courtesy, and honor. So you would hope that social pressure keeps that from happening. I've been in very large tournaments where I have thrown a shot at someone that I thought was good, and they said it wasn't. The only thing I could do is walk away going, well, I knew I hit him. And that's all I need. Or maybe I really do need to work on what I'm doing. And I'm sure I've had it happen from me as well. I am absolutely certain, no doubt, that I've missed shots that have been thrown on me because of whatever reason, heavy padding in my armor, or they might have thought the shot was good and it wasn't, whatever. A lot of times we'll talk. After the blows go, you'll see people stop and go, do you think that was good? Did you feel pressure on that? I wasn't sure, that moved my shirt, but it didn't touch me, I don't think. Did that really hit you? No, it hit my pouch. That was just sitting here. Sleeves are poofy sometimes, so that hit the sleeve, it didn't hit my arm. For the guys who are fighting in heavy armor, they have to be able to tell that the blow was good underneath the armor. and they're the only one that's in that armor, so they have to be, they really are up to their. And they'll ask. They'll say, I just saw it at our crown tournament a few weeks ago where we chose our king, where someone turned around and said, "Did you think that shot was good?" Asking the marshal there, asking other fighters there, "I'm not certain. Did you think that shot was good?" It's a great example of chivalry and honor in his case, So there's a lot of that. Are there grievance policies? Yeah, absolutely. If things get bad enough, there are lines that you could send things up and down. But we try to have it stop right there on the field.
Oh, God.
No, that's we're family. we want to make that,
right.
We want to make our friends happy. Like I keep saying, yeah, we're friends out there. We want to keep the happiness going.
Right. Now, is it a single shot kill? So, like, if you get hit in the arm, are you dead, or is it you put your arm behind your but now fight one handed?
Yeah, there's some of that. There's some point scoring systems on it. For fencing, a thrust or a 6 inches of a cut will disable a limb. A thrust or a cut to the body or the head kills you. Heavy weapons, it's a little different, but it's still the same kind of idea that if a blow hits you in the right place. Leg, lose a leg, you go down onto your knees. So there's that abstraction to it. And again, you'll get people who will say, I'm not sure, was that arm or body? And a lot of times people everyone wants to keep fighting.
Right.
Call it arm, and
right.
the other guy throws away his off weapon, and they keep fighting because more fighting is more good.
Right. We used to get that. I used to play a lot of paintball, and it was the same thing. Not so much with like losing a limb, but like, hey, did that hit? And somebody screaming, "I got you! I got you!" And you're like, no paint, no paint.
Yeah, I do a little bit of paintball too. Yeah, so that's there's nothing there. That's from the tree. That's.
Yeah. or conversely, like, you said if you're armored up enough or if it hits you like just in a weird spot or whatever, you're like, oh, I didn't see that paint. That's my bad, And maybe you find out a couple of minutes later and you're like, hey, no, I'm out. I was hit. Somebody hit me. I don't know.
Yeah, there's
green all over me.
I used to have a pair of gloves that when I first started fencing, I used to wear my motorcycle gauntlets, and they were padded back, past the hand. And one of my first tournaments, I fence, I do my thing, and one of the marshals afterwards comes over to me and he just starts tapping me on my forearm where the padding is. And he does it for about 30 seconds. And he looks at me and he goes, "Tell me when you start feeling something." And what had happened was apparently this dude kept hitting me in the hand. And I never noticed it. Because we were using these little thin foils and net bays at the time. My gloves are, motorcycle gauntlets, padded. And I just didn't feel it. And I was like, oh, gee, we talked about it. And we actually have rules about how we calibrate through armor so that you can actually know, like, oh, okay, well, that's something else there. There's, you got extra padding on that glove. Oh, you're wearing an extra piece of safety equipment over your chest. We have friends. I've got a friend who has a heart condition, so he wears a big plastic pauldron over part of his chest when he fences. So he tells you before you go out there, hey, if you hit me here and I don't react, tell me, and I'll take it as dead because I've got this plastic on. When I was right after, I think, my heart surgery, I was doing that. And I was doing the same kind of thing and going, well, I'm wearing extra thick. I wore an extra shirt underneath my armor and telling people like, yeah, if you think you got me, just let me know, and I'll take the shot.
Right. Well, that's cool. Is there a minimum age requirement because of the combat aspects and things like that for people to be able to participate?
For the grown-up stuff, I want to say 18. I think there's a rule in there for 16 with special provisions. In some places, we have youth combat. We'll dress the kids up in armor and give them boffer, and for the heavy weapon stuff, and foils and net bays for the combat fencing. And they go pretty young, and they go into elementary school age.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's, the reason that's awesome is because it keeps the family activity going.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you get the whole multi-generational thing. I can think of at least one friend of mine, who started as a child. When I first met him, he was the kid who used to go get our ice. And now he's married, super cool, and fences with me. He started out as a child doing all this stuff. But yeah, we've got all the activities for all the kids. Archery, there's no age limit, so kid wants to shoot, give him a bow, teach him the rules.
That's cool. Is there like any sort of yearly dues or anything associated with SCA?
If you want to be an actual paid member, then you pay.
What's the difference?
$45, I think. Discount at the door nowadays. As a member, I can hold offices. So if my local group needs, a local fencing marshal, the guy who runs fencing, to actually sit in the meetings, or if I want to hold any of the offices, I have to be a member.
That makes sense.
Voting in local, some of our territorial barons and baronesses actually come about from a vote. To be able to vote, I have to be a member. The nicest thing about being a member is I'm contributing to the organization. So, that money is getting used for the insurance that's covering me.
Right.
And we get a discount at the door nowadays. $3, $5, I don't remember, because I've been a steady member now for quite a while. So I barely even noticed. We used to have a rule that said you couldn't have awards unless you were a member. That was a motivation.
So is there any, if you're not at an event, you guys are kind of doing like your daily stuff. Is there any sort of like behind the scenes, like LARP stuff? Is there like undermining the king? Or are there any like court intrigues? Or, is there any sort of like vampire-esque LARPing that goes around in the background?
Not as such, but the stuff that goes on in the background, and recently making friends with people who have ended up being kings and queens, and being friends with people who are part of the leadership of the organization. A lot of that leadership doesn't, that work doesn't end outside of the event, dealing with either the legalities, if there's some policy things that have to be dealt with, and seeing how they deal with that. Dealing with getting awards. We have an award structure. Some of those awards are based on the advice of the members who already have those awards. So those happen outside of game, so to speak. So there's some discussion. That's probably the closest we get to court intrigue, are those of us who are deciding who gets the next award. So there's a lot of management that goes on outside of it. As for political machinations, to dethrone princes, etc., nah. We do a little bit of that in shtick sometimes, because we do have a court kind of structure. Court is where all of our business is done, and court is theater. So at least once during court, a friend of mine and I, a long time ago, had kidnapped a local baron, and we made a shtick of it. Now it turns out that guy is a gigantic practical joker, and he turned it around on us and didn't let us in on the joke, and we were held by the royal guard for a while we had to find this baron. And prove that we didn't actually steal his coronet, like this actually really nice, precious metal coronet. So there are things that kind of shtick that goes on. I've been involved in duels with my friends because someone said something that kind of triggered the right kind of response of let's settle that with steel tomorrow.
Nice.
Totally, maybe mostly tongue in cheek, and again, we're all friends, so it's not like we're actually doing this in ire. Some kings and queens have their own type of shtick that they want to have performed because of their particular personas, because of the region or the time period that they're portraying would have this particular kind of thing happening around them. They may have something staged or set up to be able to do. One of our kings had a Roman persona, and he, the day of his coronation, when he was being made king, he came into court in his gladiator gear, so nothing regal on him at all. If I remember right, he was barefoot with a spear. And part of the shtick was somebody saying, "Are you kidding? This guy's going to be our king? Like, look at him. He's some slave that just got pulled in here from the fighting pits." And he stage slapped him and knocked him down, and there was that kind of fun sort of thing. So anything for a good laugh. There's that kind of thing that goes on there. Unfortunately, we don't have a mechanic in place for the big kind of masquerade-esque sort of machination.
Sure, and I guess as big as the kingdoms are, it would be kind of hard to even if you did have mechanics try to coordinate that stuff. Like, sure, individual groups of people could sort of do it, or maybe the officers in the court wanted to kind of mockingly, not mockingly, but sort of get in that practical joke-esque aspect of let's do some weird shit in the kingdom or something. But to get like whole groups of people, I imagine it would be a real nightmare.
You want to know what does happen, which is really interesting. You find some people, if they really enjoy one particular part of history and it's a little more obscure, they're going to try to, whenever possible, have it portrayed somewhere where people are going to see it. So the guy who started me fencing went and he arranged all of this beforehand. He had himself arrested for dueling and then put on trial in court for public dueling. This is a historical thing for the period of the period of time that he was portraying and the nation that he was portraying. And he was doing it as an educational thing. He wanted to show people what a trial for this type of thing was. That's kind of what I do with the duels, that I study a lot of Renaissance history in terms of dueling culture and the laws surrounding it. So if there's a chance, I will, if there's a chance for me to start a duel, I'm jumping into it, and do it publicly and get people interested in seeing that part of history and what that kind of was. I know someone who for a performance competition read entrails. So she, not actual entrails, but she got a crocheted bunny. I think it was a bunny, and read the entrails from it.
Nice.
As part of a performance thing. So there's going to be these opportunities where if you've got groups of people or individuals who are really, really into something, they're going to find an opportunity to be able to display it. And that's going to be the closest thing you get to that sort of, massive amounts of people doing some type of courtly sort of thing. Whether you've got people who are portraying a military unit or a royal household or some other type of group, some civic group or something, they're going to find these opportunities and they're going to take what they've researched, they're going to bring materials and they're going to show it off. And generally it's going to be pretty well accepted. The courts are usually pretty good on being able to show off this kind of stuff and taking a couple of minutes to show off the really cool things.
That's cool. Now you practice the fencing and sword fighting. Are you do you teach at SCA events? Are you teaching professionally, or are you interested in teaching professionally to people who may be interested?
I'm very interested in that, and there is a mechanism in place that I could do that through historical European martial arts chapters, through HEMA clubs, which I haven't gone through the process yet of doing. Now, I teach a lot in the SCA. One of my favorite activities is to teach fencing. I'm taking a little bit of a break from it. I had some medical problems recently, where doctors advised best if I stay off my feet for a little while. I'm also reevaluating kind of how I teach. And again, the SCA has very specific kind of rules. So if I'm teaching in the SCA, I'm teaching for SCA fencing. I really would like to teach and spread more more work on Western swordsmanship outside of the SCA. There are groups out there that do it. Like I said, historical European martial arts chapters are big for that. And when I'm healed up, that's definitely on the itinerary.
Very cool. Let's see what else we have here. Vince has a note that you are a huge collector of fighting manuals.
Yes.
How easy is it to? So, are they historical fighting manuals, or does it like run the gamut? How hard is something like that to find, especially more of a historical stuff?
Wow, how hard is it to find? Oh, grab this one here. There's one.
There you go.
I'm in my office, so it's cheating a little bit. There's been this giant renaissance, no pun intended, of interest in Western sword fighting. So there are a lot of scholars out there who are going out and finding these old fighting manuals from the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, translating them and putting them to market. It's a gigantic undertaking to be able to do it. I've met a few of the authors and practitioners who are doing it. They run the gambit, from 1400s to most of mine, 15 and 1600s. They continued making them. Well, they're fighting manuals that exist today. An enormous amount of them are on Amazon. That's the great thing about it. That we found publishers for them, and there's an actual want. There's a need for them, and the practitioners who are using them are doing the scholarly thing. They're looking at the translation, and they're seeing if it treads water. They're comparing translations. They're practicing what's in these manuals in earnest, and seeing what is actually practical, what actually works, what doesn't work. And they're adjusting their interpretations based on that. They're discovering that there are words that don't really have English translations that existed from back then. And we're determining what these terms mean. How is it supposed to work? What is a stringere? And how does one stringere a blade? Means to string. How does one string a blade? Cavazione. How does one properly cavazione? Is it really a disengage, or are you fully engaged or not engaged? So the scholarship is there, and it's happening. The really cool thing is that some of the guys who are doing this, like I said, they're going to the original sources. They're going to the museums, they're going to the libraries that have these and saying, okay, nobody's seen this thing, and for a long while we know it exists. We know multiple versions of it exist. I want to reproduce it. And they're getting the money together, some of them through crowdfunding. And they're reproducing them. And like I said, they're working on the translations themselves. And they're putting them out onto the market. And then guys like me pick them up and we practice them and see if this is practical. Does it actually work?
That's outstanding. You're reviving this lost art.
I like to think of it as keeping it alive. Yeah. That's one of the things that got me into the SCA was somebody saying, without us, some of these things die.
Yeah.
That's it. Full stop. And with, as I'm looking up at my, a small collection of my manuals from up here, I feel really good that there are entire hobbies out there of people who are arguing about how to practice these things. Western martial arts has gotten a really big following now. Well, maybe not really big compared to other small hobbies, I guess. But there are a lot of people out there who are really discussing seriously, how are we supposed to use a sword? How did they use it in history? And why does it matter? And these are the same questions they were asking back then. I've got a German fighting manual from the 1500s that says, what, in this age of cannon and musket and shot, let's go back to learning what the value of the sword is and the things that are important about soldiering, and the connection that we as soldiers have by fighting with swords. That's pretty damn progressive for someone in the 1500s. I've got other fencing manuals that say, the purpose of the sword is for the defending of God and the defending of one's queen. Great. Saying nothing in there about personal violence or, those types of things, but it really is, here's what I'm going to teach you. This is why it's a noble art. This is why it's important. I've got other manuals up there that stress the science of sword fighting, and that say that just as an animal uses claws, we have ways of using these swords that fall into nature. It's appropriate, and here's how it falls into nature. I apologize. I keep glancing up at him because I'm like, yeah,
that's all right.
I love these. And I'm going to keep rambling. I just want to grab them and start opening up to pages and just go, here's something about nationalism and about Italian pride and fighting, and here's another one on why the English form of fighting is important to maintain English culture and tradition, and why you shouldn't. Another book that says why you don't teach people who are angry or quick to anger, and you only, it's a scholarly thing. And man, it's there's a lot. I keep learning more and more about our culture today by studying Renaissance swordsmanship. Not just about things like personal honor and things like that, but really they had the same arguments in the 1500s about carrying sidearms that we do now.
Right.
They had the arguments of, is an armed society safer? Or is it more dangerous because suddenly everybody's armed? And who should be carrying arms? Should we be limiting it to a smaller population? Was it with all these kids going out there and learning how to fence? That's a fight start.
Damn kids, get off my lawn.
There's a lot of nationalism in there. I've learned more about immigration laws in England in the 1500s by studying fencing than I ever expected to. And then realizing that they had the same fears. That in England in the 1500s, they were terrified of these Italians who were coming over with their crazy religion. And clearly they're all coming over to subvert the lawful religion and the laws of England. Can't trust those wild Italians. and they're super long swords, and they're crazy poetry. Same kind of arguments that we're having today. I keep looking up at those manuals. I gotta stop.
Well, I can kind of see the nationalism aspect of it, right? Because if as a culture or a principality, like so, like maybe the area in Venice has different swordsmanship than in Rome or whatever, that they would be very I think it akin to like Japanese swordsmanship and like individual martial arts. Chen style is Chen style and Yang style is Yang style, and never those two are going to mix. So I can kind of see that, those sort of things would all, sort of be mashed together in that martial aspect of swordsmanship. And by extension, like you're saying, the larger, and how those things relate. It's interesting because you're like, who buys books on swordsmanship? And then, to hear you talk about it and see all these things sort of come out of that. Hey, it's a fighting manual, but it's not just a fighting manual.
Swords were fashion. When you hit the 1500s, the rapier is just as much a fashion statement as it is a sidearm. The rapier is your Prada bag. It's your Gucci purse. To wear it means you're showing off. You might be saying you have money. You might be saying you're educated. Now, here's where that parallel really does match nowadays. There are a lot of people out there with Prada bags and Chanel purses that should not have Prada bags and Chanel purses. They got it because it helps them look rich. Well, they did the same thing. So you have a lot of middle-class people who are wearing, this sidearm that looks really cool. And it's a symbol of wealth and a certain amount of coolness. And the Italians who were coming in were teaching how to use this sword, this really long, really kind of pretty sword. And they were fighting differently than the English were. The English had this very practical attitude towards sword fighting, very egalitarian. Everybody should use the same kind of sword, roughly the same kind of style. It's meant to defend your home. Here come the Italians saying, hey, this is actually for personal defense. And it's a piece of fashion. There's a fear when something new comes into your country. So, it just like in the 50s and the 60s when parents were afraid of that rock and roll rotting their kids' minds. People were afraid of these Italian sword fighting masters coming into their city and saying, well, here's this new fashion. And it flew in the face of how they were doing things before. So there was pushback. There was fear. There was violence as a result of it. And it boils down to fashion and money more than anything else. Keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up with the rest of Europe who were wearing this cool new kind of sidearm before the wearing of arms, fell out of fashion not too long after that.
Oh, yeah, firearms made that, pretty much a zero-sum game.
and laws.
Yeah.
There's and turning things into sport. Every good martial activity eventually gets turned into sport, right? Right. So fisticuffs turn into boxing. The practice of arms turns into fencing, and instead of rapiers, we go back down to foils and epées and sabers, and you get to see it all nice and safe in the Olympics. And we don't have dueling in the streets.
Right. Well, so I wonder, and I don't know how familiar you are with Japanese swordsmanship and history. So on the assumption that you do, what's the main difference between European martial arts in regards to swordsmanship and Japanese arts in regards to swordsmanship?
There are people who could answer that question better than I can.
I figured I would ask since we're talking.
I know precious little about Japanese swordsmanship. We do have a lot of people in the SCA who do know. I focus mostly on swordsmanship that might have been done by civilians. So that 1500 swash, what we associate with swashbucklers nowadays. The defense of the common man. I can describe maybe not pretty well. I'll say this. I can say this with some authority. There are tremendous similarities between using a katana and a two-handed sword or a longsword. In just how you cut some techniques. My friends and I have noticed this, seeing some really cool, people who know how to use katanas. And then I stand there with a longsword and go, oh, well, that guard that you're doing there, oh, we've got one of those in German swordsmanship too. Oh, that guard that you're doing there, but we've got one of those in Italian swordsmanship too. So there are a lot of similarities to it. You stand me there with someone and I'll show them to you. But the great thing I've learned from watching Eastern and Western martial arts is that there's more similarities than there are differences. The bodies are meant to work in a particular way. So what works for me is generally going to work for you too. And again, it's that nice, not to sound too hippie about it, but I like that connection. If there's anything that I can connect with anyone else across this planet with, we can do it through martial arts. I can show the similarities between what I study and what somebody in Korea or Japan or China studies.
Right. And it doesn't have to be the necessarily the martial aspect of it, but it's the the philosophy and everything behind it. It's not just, okay, I stab you. There's so much more to martial arts than just.
Oh, of course, yeah, than just the physical practice of it. Very quickly, I'll mention, my kid's martial arts instructor, when I was showing him a page from an Italian fencing manual, and this one really, really ugly, stupid-looking guard that looks like it has absolutely no purpose. And I showed it to him, and I said, "Can you guess what this is for?" And he said, "An overhand blow coming down onto your head." I said, "Yes, that's exactly what it is." He said, "We have one of those in Kung Fu, and it's the exact same." The exact same hand position. It's the exact same arm position. The only difference is you're holding a sword. I'm like, perfect. That's awesome. It's the exact same. The fencing one is the exact same defense.
Nice. Well, that's pretty cool. I like it.
He seems underwhelmed, everybody.
No.
It's just all right.
By the way, it's also a little late for me because I'm a nerd, but it's
No. It's not that at all. I actually love talking about this stuff and listening and learning more. And this is, I blame John, but this is a good thing. We went so far afield from our original questions, and we delved a little bit deeper into just a few. Like, all right, well, that's great. But I wanted to flip it back around to the gaming table, as it were, and and find out a little bit more about what you're working on, what you're playing, and what your preferences are as far as DMing versus being a player. And feel free to start off with any of those.
Okay, right now I'm kind of in a slump. I haven't gotten a chance to do a lot of playing or running recently because life, injuries, that kind of crap. But a few of my friends and I, we pulled out the old TSR Marvel Superheroes game.
Oh, nice.
And I'm running. Now, the running joke with any game, and Vince, I know you can back me up on this. Any game that I run, eventually, will turn into Call of Cthulhu.
Yes.
And I apologize to all of my players for that. And I promised my Marvel group, I promised them, this is a super game. This is not going to become Call of Cthulhu. Don't worry about it. They're playing New Mutants. I'm doing it very Chris Claremont, 80s New Mutant style. Nice. Fantastic. Except it also involves an occult village somewhere in Eastern Europe and Doctor Doom. And Doctor Doom manipulating a mutant who can summon demons, so that he can eventually summon Mephisto to the to Earth, so that Doom can defeat him here on
Gotcha. I'm still sensing an H.P. Lovecraft theme there. It's,
yeah. You know, and that's, I'll apologize to them later. So that was a big fun thing. I am having more fun right now hand drawing D&D maps than anything else. You know,
I've seen some of your work, things you've posted on your blog and such, and a few things in person. Your maps are really, really good, very intricate, very good.
Yeah, you know, it's that connection back to being a little kid. You know, with you know,
the hex paper and the graph paper.
Yeah, you know, I'm loving just sitting there with a couple of pencils and, you know, and drawing something out. I would love to get some type of old school D&D thing playing now and again. It's hard as hell for me to find people for that. I'm in love with 5th Ed. I get to play it very rarely. I really enjoy the system. Continuing the retro theme, I should be doing a D6 Star Wars game sometime.
Nice.
Down to the area.
You were doing the tabletop war game Star Wars. What's that called?
X-Wing.
That's it. Yeah.
I love X-Wing. The thing that kills me for playing X-Wing is that there are people who take it seriously. And whenever anyone, like, look, I just want to move an X-Wing, like a bunch of little X-Wing minis around the table, and make pew-pew noises. Like, all of my builds, all of my lists are all very like, no, this is Wedge and Luke, where they're coming back from a patrol, and they've got, like, there is no practicality to it whatsoever. There is a backstory to my lists. Thank you very much.
There you go.
Which means I lose a lot. You know, and when you got guys who are hardcore, you know, furrowed brow over the war table, oh man, Star Wars, dude, it's X-Wings and TIE fighters. We should be making pew pew noises and freaking, like, why doesn't somebody have like a Chewbacca action figure sitting next to here, man? God, yeah, that's my big fun. You know, I don't get to do that enough either. Those are the big things. I'm in a little bit of an adult gaming slump right now. I want to do more, and I'm starting to get attracted by a lot of different things too. I'm on a few LARPing boards on Facebook, so now
there's so much out there.
Yeah, you know, and getting really like, man, they do some awesome stuff. You know, just what people are making, it's really gorgeous. I want to be part of that. You know, war gamers, I've always loved simulationist type stuff. You know, so seeing any type of tabletop war game out there, like, I want to jump in and play. I've got armies for games that I'll never play lying around here. Man, and now you got me thinking, like, as I'm looking over some of my game collection. The only thing I haven't gotten into really is board gaming. I can't really, like, there are a few, like the D&D board games I really enjoy. Betrayal at House on the Hill and Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, you know, absolutely love. Some of the more campy little like card games and war games I really enjoy. Can't really get into board games right now. Outside of that, well, Ogre. I got my super giant box of Ogre, dominating half of my bookshelf. Over here, which I don't even think I've played yet.
On deck.
Yeah, exactly. Although, if I can brag for 1 second, there is a war game that a friend of mine just gave me a copy of that I desperately want to play. And it is, I don't know if the camera is going to get that right.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
It is the old SBI.
Yep.
War of the Ring. And she was like, I'm not a wargaming kind of person. Here, you can have it. Like, oh my god!
That's great. It's like the old Iron Crown Middle Earth role-playing game, or MERP. Yep.
Yeah, I missed that too. Like, I think I've got a copy of that lying around here too. I'm trying to I've got a really nice game collection, and I would like to have it be more than a collection and actually use it. Like, there's some gems in here that I haven't played in ever. I've got like the first edition of Ars Magica up here.
Oh wow!
That I would love to give a try. Just because it's neat, or it looks neat, and clearly people liked it at one point. So it would be cool to do. We've got some old editions of Pendragon up here, yeah, those are the big ones. The Marvel game is probably the most fun thing I'm doing right now. Oh, and Starfinder. I'm going to be starting up a Starfinder game too,
okay.
Which looks really. I've read through that rule book 3 or 4 times now, and I really like the setting. I like what they're doing with it. It looks really interesting. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Now, is that through? Is Paizo putting that out?
Yep.
One of friends of the show, Kevin Mason. He does Jack Monkey Games. He just started up an actual play of that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. I want to see what direction it goes in. I'm glad it's not fully God, what was the one the TSR put out back in the day? Their space D&D.
Star Frontiers?
No, everyone always says Star Frontiers first.
Or Gamma World.
No, it was the actual D&D in space. They came out for second.
Space Jammer? Something like that. Space Jammer or something?
Spelljammer.
Spelljammer.
That was
like the one where they used.
That was in the 90s.
Yeah, magic items were the fuel for their starships.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was very short-lived.
Was it? Yeah, I never really got into it. I saw that there was a hippo race that was like pretty much my level of cool factor for that. Like, well, you could play a hippo.
There you go.
Awesome. Like that. That's,
Yeah, some settings just don't hit like all the right buttons.
Not really. And that's all of them right there.
Yep.
Now, not so much in the board games, but role-playing games. You prefer the playing or overall DMing, refereeing? Do you like that control, that creativity?
I like the creativity.
Okay.
GMing and world creation and adventure creation is like my major creative outlet right now.
Okay, so you're world building, yeah.
Yeah, to the point that I'm worried whether I've talked with a couple of my writer friends about this, of whether it's impeding my writing, whether I'm cheating, and getting all the things that I would like to put into fiction, and instead putting them into gaming.
Okay.
Because it's to an extent less work, I guess. Because I get to write it in shorthand.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, and the great thing is that's multi-genre. If anything, I've got an idea for a police suspense thing. Well, okay, I'll write that up as an adventure for, I don't know, for Night's Black Agents or Trail of Cthulhu or something.
There you go.
Yeah, I enjoy that part of it. I've got notebooks and notebooks of stuff that I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day. Of different types of world building things, and some of it's traditional old school fantasy tropes, or old sci-fi tropes. Others, just commonplace book type notes. Those scrawling notes of a madman. Trying to think of some of the ones that I've got a sketch for when I was coming up with ideas for Starfinder. I've got this image stuck in my head of this giant Stargate type thing that's being overseen by exceptionally tall robed guards. So I sketched it out really quickly. and just with these little iconic people standing next to it. This gigantic, ornate thing. I've decided that has to be in the heart of a starship somewhere.
Cool.
And it's not even a gate. It's just where you commune with your god.
Yeah.
I like it. That I'm going to use. Now, I speaking, on a webcast about gaming that's totally rational. In a notebook, scrawled in ink with some pencil marks next to it in the context of notes on everything from, like a picture of a flower to notes on sword fighting, to shopping lists. It's the Diary of a Madman. It's my only regret after death is I can't be there for the guys who are going to be going through these things, who are just going clearly ahead of his time. But yeah, the world building, idea building, concept building.
Okay.
Just little. I'm looking around here. I've got Moleskines lying all over the place.
Oh,
Stuff.
That's awesome.
That's right. This was going to be a spell book. Like there's some stuff there. You can't see it on camera. Yeah.
But do you find yourself when you're doing your world building, do more like set piece, ideas like the gate or not gate with the rogue figures, as opposed to huge overarching stories? Because as soon as you introduce that to the players, they're like, oh, that's cool, but there's a rabbit over here, so I'll be over there, and we'll whatever you're doing.
And taught his daughter to say when she was a small child, the players were that's I try to stay away from coming up with the big overarching things because they number one, it's been done better than me. Number two, if it's actually sitting down in play, they will come up with that eventually better, and I might just come up with an idea and just throw something in.
Right.
And just go, okay, well, wait, there's this one prince over here who, and then they build it up. And then I much rather, on the micro, just come up with something interesting, like, oh, well, here's a church that is actually, it was once dedicated to an evil god, but nobody knows that. They never realized it. So that's why their little heads along the top of the wall. People think they're just gargoyle heads. Well, they were actually the focuses for it, but nobody's ever going to know that.
Right.
Those go in my notes, and that to me is the really fun stuff to come up with. Character background things that might never see point of play. I really like the macros, and I also really enjoy coming up with the idea of, okay, well, this is the what if, and just taking something to its next logical or illogical step. Okay, well, what if a knight has to live in the same castle with the undead, and the undead can't go away? What next? Okay, well, that's going to be that part of the setting, and that'll be a couple of pages right up, and maybe the players will get to it, maybe they won't. But I've got it down there.
Well, and you can always drop it in somewhere else too, right? I mean, that's the, you don't want to put people on rails, but
right, exactly, yeah.
There is inherent mind, like, you're going to tell a story that we're participating in.
Right.
Maybe you're not going to tell a story, but you're going to present options, and everybody's buying into that, right? So, like, if it's, we meet at the tavern and there's a wizard who's assaulting the town. Okay, cool. We're going to go do that. We're not going to go and now be cattle farmers because what are we doing?
No, I've got the players who will go, well, I'm really curious to see what we could do as cattle farmers. What if, and they'll rationalize it, and so will I, given the right opportunity. Well, that wizard who's attacking, he has reasons, and who am I to question his reasons?
Right.
He's got his thing going on. Clearly someone in this town wronged him. I'm staying out of that fight because, cattle.
Right.
Now, I will say one of my friends who was playing an assassin came up with the greatest concept as he was like, well, you know what, I am going to settle down while some other people are working on the local castle. He did buy himself a nice plot of land, and he started a pig farm because he's an assassin. And pigs will eat anything. So there was his... It took me a few minutes for it. He was like...
I don't need to bury anything.
Yeah, and that was... Yeah. And like that's brilliant. That's fantastic. You know, I like throwing in the, you know, the detail that eventually someone else might add more to because they thought something was interesting. You know, and they'll have a, you know, I'll just say, well, there's this guy. He's performing on stage. He's smoking. He looks tired. He's playing guitar. He's playing a song, and you know, if someone else adds in, as guitar's out of tune. Okay, well, next step, why is his guitar out of tune? Is he actually a good musician? Well, maybe he is, but he's just tone deaf. Well, maybe it's, and then we play that what if. Well, why? What is, and how does that make a more interesting character to interact with and play with? And it may seem very banal and very, you know, what's the point of adding this kind of a detail? Man, my players will sit there for an hour, you know, talking to this NPC because they just suddenly made him more interesting because he can't ever keep his guitar in tune. You know, those are the details that I love and the fact that they'll add to it. For a Star Wars game a long time ago, I had I was thinking I wanted to have a character who was just down on his luck, angry. I decided he was a nihilist. No, maybe not full nihilist, but man, why is he angry? Well, let's go for the easy things. His family was on Alderaan. He's from Alderaan. Okay. Well, who is he hanging out with? Well, misery loves company. So he's hanging out with other bastards. All right, well, why are they angry? Well, there's a whole bunch of places in Star Wars that the planets were either destroyed or had their atmospheres ripped off or poison let off into their atmospheres. Well, what if you had an entire group of those people? Well, what if you made an entire combat group of all those people? Just a bunch of nihilists. So you have an entire fighter squadron in the rebellion who are all nihilists because they're all from cultures that were destroyed by the Empire. Oh, great. These guys are terrifying because they've got nothing left to lose. So now my PCs have to work alongside of them.
Interesting group of pirates, that's for sure.
It writes itself. You know, so those are, and then they add to it and they just go, there's got to be insert whatever in there. There's got to be, you know, I can't even remember what they added to it. I just remember the stupid little notes I was adding. One guy who joined who didn't know that they were all nihilists. And now he's lying about being from Alderaan. Yeah, you know, like silly little things like that. Those are the fun.
I love that for the podcast because we, you know, there's no map, there's no minis, everything's like theater of their mind, and you know we've got good GMs that you know will start to describe a scene or tell a story or whatever, and people will pick up that thread, you know, pull at that thread and be like, oh yeah, you know, it's this or that, and I really enjoy that aspect of role playing, especially for the podcast, because it makes the worlds that much, you know, richer for people that are, you know, going to tune in and listen later on, and for us to play. Like our Fear Itself game, it's stupid, but it's so much fun. I mean, like it's modern day setting, and you know, it's an hour of us role playing, going to the diner and getting a sandwich and talking to the waitress, and like, you know, doing 45 minutes of planning because we have to go try to kill this monster, and it's just fantastic.
One of the most fun things that we ever did while playing Bookhounds of London, which you wouldn't expect to have, like the concept of the game is you run a bookshop. Okay, it's an occult bookshop in a Cthulhu world, but still, you know, it takes a special type. Well, it's in the 1930s. My friend and I decided, because I had occult contacts, I was going to call Aleister Crowley for something because I'm close personal friends with Aleister Crowley, or at least I know him. So I'm on the phone with Aleister Crowley. My character's on the phone with Aleister Crowley. I'm not personally on.
Yeah.
And, that would be awesome. And my friend, while I'm acting as if I'm talking on the phone with Aleister Crowley, is just going, "Are you on the phone with Fatty again?" And I just, without skipping a beat, I look at him and go, "He can hear you." He goes, "Well, of course he can hear me. His ears aren't that bad. It's just the rest of him that's." Stop calling him that. He's very sensitive. No, Aleister, nobody's calling you. Oh, okay, now he's crying. You know, and that was. We're always going back to that one of just
you crying, just a little.
You know, it besides the fact that in that campaign world now, Aleister Crowley is very sensitive about his weight, and we make him cry. But it's also that was one of the highlights of the session. You're not saying it was a boring game. It wasn't. It was a fantastic game. You know, there were heists and cons and occult and spells and murder and all that stuff. And this one moment of my friend and I, completely in character, talking to Aleister Crowley on the phone. And that was, like that's the moment I look for in gaming. Other people talk about, yeah, we killed Asmodeus. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, that time we killed Dio. Yeah, that's awesome. You know, sure. You know, for us, you know, sometimes that moment is just that, you know, that thing, that one line that someone just goes, now that's the setting. We got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit of magic when you can get that in a game, and you hope to recreate that every time that you play. I love that so much.
That is good stuff. That's for sure.
I mean, we'll go whole sessions and not roll dice because we're just
It's the best.
role playing. Yeah, it's fantastic.
We did that of all things with One Ring, the Tolkien role playing recent one. Fantastic system, so much detail to it. Some of our most fun moments of that were not in terms of the adventure, but just in terms of, you know, the Hobbit making muffins, you know, and just the conversations between characters. And it just, you have those moments and you go, this is the Tolkien moment. You know, you've wrapped it up. Pulling it back to the SCA, we have the same kind of thing there. Some people call it the dream. You know, it's that moment where the smells are right, the look is right, the atmosphere is right. You got it. You know, that moment that you're walking out onto the battlefield and it's literally mist covered and you're in armor and you're waiting, or that moment that you're in the hall and everybody is laughing and dancing and there's music playing and you've got a sword on your hip and you're going to go sit somewhere and have a drink. That moment, you know, those are exactly what I look for in gaming too. If I could have that, you know, we've captured the genre, or we've captured the adventure, or we've captured the setting. I remember my Vampire the Masquerade game when the campaign finally ended and people were crying. You know, because of that, it was the most personal thing. You know, and you've got people who are actually tearing. And we're friends. We're not going anywhere. We're going to the diner after this. You know, like but there are people crying at the table. Like that's, I can never recapture that. You know, I can try. You know, I can keep chasing Amy as much as I want. You know, but that's I'm not going to be able to recapture that. If I can have that organically happen again, man.
Nice pull. I like that reference. Well, that was beautifully stated, and I think that's probably a good place to wrap it on that note of just that magic of those moments and the things that we look for, and you know, in our gaming and we do the SEA, and you know, and even in our regular lives. I mean, that's stuff that transfers through. You know, it's a moment with your kid or you know, with your wife or you know, your pets or whatever. Like that's you know, that's where things are, or at least where they should be, right? Like all the other stuff sort of falls away when you hit that that note, you know.
Absolutely.
It's taking the two paths in the woods, and the one you're going for is the good memories, making good memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so then I want to thank you for coming on. This was a ton of fun.
Oh man, thank you. I had a blast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, I knew a little bit about the SCA, but I feel like I've gotten a full like college class worth of information. So that was cool.
SCA 101.
I'll keep rambling.
Well, we'll have to have you back on again, part 2.
I'll be happy. I'll talk gaming, fencing, swords, nerding, whatever, man.
I think we asked like 3 questions that were actually on the we'll have to get you in on our next gaming roundtable then, which we haven't done like in forever, but we'll.
Yeah, we need to do that. That'll be good.
Yeah, we'll get you queued up for that. And we've got links to your blog, so if people are interested in any of the SEA stuff. I guess you do some other blogging on there as well as gaming related things. So if people want to check that out, links are in the show notes. Obviously, people who've made it this far, you've already heard this interview, but for people who might be kind of like jumping around, this will also be available as an MP3 maybe tomorrow. I have to edit everything. It'll be coming out soon.
Yeah.
If you enjoy this content, hit the like, the subscribe. If you could leave us a review or just a rating on your favorite podcatcher of choice, iTunes, Podchaser, whatever, we appreciate that. That helps us out a ton. We're on all of the social medias, so like and subscribe in all the various places. Some of them are more active than others. And don't forget, you can order your awesome legendary brew at Birds of a Feather Coffee. There's a very convoluted link in the show notes, so click on that. It's awesome. It's what I drink. You should give it a try, maybe. I don't know. We make a little bit of money on that, so that's cool. But the coffee's great. So I want to thank everybody for checking this out. Thanks to Mike for coming in. Thanks for Vince for pulling Mike over to us. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys.
And
you're welcome.
All right, and we'll catch you all next time.
Later, people. Leave a review, damn it.